There is a very specific experience that many women have at some point in their late 30s or 40s, and it often doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Life is still functioning. Responsibilities are still being handled. From the outside, everything can appear relatively stable, but internally, something shifts. Tasks that used to feel manageable begin to require more effort. Focus becomes less reliable. Small things feel disproportionately draining, and there is a quiet but persistent sense that your system is working harder than it used to, just to maintain the same level of output. Because this shift happens gradually, it is rarely questioned at first. It is usually explained away. Stress, hormones, life circumstances, getting older. And while all of those factors can play a role, for many women this moment is not simply about change, it is about recognition. A pattern that has always been there becomes visible for the first time because the strategies that once compensated for it are no longer enough. And that pattern, for many, is ADHD. The difficulty is that ADHD in women, especially high-functioning women, does not match the stereotype. It is not necessarily loud, impulsive, or visibly disorganized. It is often structured, masked, and internalized. Many women develop systems early in life that allow them to perform well, to meet expectations, to stay organized, and to appear consistent. But these systems often come at a cost. They require constant effort, constant self-regulation, and a level of internal pressure that is not visible from the outside. And over time, especially after 40, when hormonal changes begin to affect dopamine regulation, emotional resilience, and cognitive flexibility, that cost becomes harder to sustain. So instead of looking at surface-level behavior, I want to walk through 8 signs of ADHD from the inside. Not as a checklist, but as a lived experience, because recognition happens when something feels familiar, not when it is clinically described. The first sign is a constant sense of mental overload that doesn't match your external life. Even when your schedule is relatively normal, your internal experience feels full. Your brain is tracking multiple layers at once. Conversations are not just conversations. They include tone, subtext, emotional nuance. Environments are not neutral. They are filled with visual details, movement, sound, and subtle shifts that your system continues to register. At the same time, there is an ongoing awareness of things you still need to do, things you forgot earlier, things you might need to prepare for later. None of this is necessarily conscious, but it is active. And because very little is filtered out automatically, your system rarely experiences true quiet. This is why moments of stillness can feel disproportionately relieving, not because nothing is happening, but because for a brief moment, your brain is not processing as many simultaneous inputs. The second sign is inconsistent access to focus. This is often misunderstood because it doesn't look like a lack of focus. In many cases, it is the opposite. There are moments of very deep concentration where you can move quickly, think clearly, and complete tasks efficiently, especially when something is interesting, urgent, or emotionally engaging. But this level of focus is not something you can reliably access on demand. On other days, even very simple tasks feel difficult to start. You may find yourself delaying things that you fully intend to do, not because you don't care, but because you cannot generate the activation needed to begin. This creates a very specific kind of frustration, because from the outside it looks like inconsistency, but from the inside it feels like a lack of control over your own attention. The third sign is a form of exhaustion that doesn't reflect what you have actually done. You may complete a relatively normal day and still feel completely depleted. Not just tired, but mentally drained. This happens because every task requires more internal effort than it appears. You are constantly redirecting your attention, filtering distractions, managing emotional responses, and pushing through resistance to initiate or continue tasks. Even when you are sitting still, your brain is active, and over time, this creates a baseline of fatigue that is not resolved by rest alone, because the source of the exhaustion is ongoing cognitive load. The fourth sign is difficulty with starting tasks and transitioning between them. From the outside, this is often labeled as procrastination, but from the inside, it feels more like friction. You know what needs to be done. There is no confusion about the task itself, but there is a gap between knowing and doing that feels difficult to cross. Starting requires activation, and that activation can feel disproportionately high for small or uninteresting tasks. At the same time, once you are engaged in something, especially if it is stimulating or absorbing, stopping can be just as difficult. This leads to patterns where tasks are delayed, then completed in intense bursts, followed by exhaustion. It is not a time management issue. It is an energy regulation issue. The fifth sign is a long-standing feeling of being out of sync with the world. You may have always felt that things affect you more deeply than they seem to affect others, that you need more recovery time, that the pace of modern life feels slightly too fast, too dense, or too demanding. You might have adapted by becoming highly organized or highly controlled, creating systems that allow you to keep up. But underneath that adaptation, there is often a nervous system that is working harder to maintain stability. And without understanding why, this difference is often interpreted as a personal limitation instead of a neurological pattern. The sixth sign is emotional intensity and difficulty regulating that intensity once it is activated. Emotions can arise quickly and feel strong, even in situations that appear minor from the outside. And once they are present, they can linger. You may find yourself replaying conversations, analyzing interactions, or staying in a certain emotional state longer than you would like. This is not about being overly emotional. It is about how your nervous system processes emotional input. The activation is fast, and the return to baseline can be slower. This can create a sense of being overwhelmed not only by external demands, but also by your own internal responses. The seventh sign is a repeated pattern of trying to fix yourself with systems that don't last. You may have tried different routines, planners, productivity methods, or strict schedules. And often, they work at first. There is a phase where everything feels structured, clear, and under control. But then something shifts. The system becomes harder to maintain. It starts to feel restrictive, or you begin to avoid it, and eventually it falls apart. And when that happens, it often feels like you failed again. But the deeper issue is that many of these systems are built on consistency and repetition, while ADHD brains function better with flexibility, variation, and lower friction. What works is not strict control, but adaptive structure. The eighth sign is a strong sensitivity to your environment. Certain places feel immediately overwhelming, while others feel calming and supportive. Noise levels, visual clutter, lighting, pace, and even the layout of a space all influence how your nervous system responds. In some environments, your attention feels scattered, your energy drains quickly, and even simple tasks become harder. In other environments, everything feels clearer, more accessible, and easier to manage. This is not a minor preference. It is a direct reflection of how your brain processes sensory input. Now, none of these signs on their own confirm ADHD, but when several of them are present consistently over time, they form a pattern, and that pattern offers a different way of understanding your experience. Instead of asking why things feel harder for you, you begin to see that your brain may simply require a different kind of structure. So what can you actually do with this? The first step is awareness without pressure. You don't need to immediately define or diagnose anything, but you can start noticing patterns. When does your focus work naturally? When does it disappear? Which environments support you, and which ones drain you? This kind of awareness creates clarity, and clarity reduces unnecessary self-criticism. The second step is reducing friction. Instead of expecting yourself to function consistently, look at where your current systems create resistance. Can tasks be simplified? Can steps be reduced? Can something be made easier to start? A DHD-friendly structure is not about doing more, it is about lowering the threshold for action. The third step is actively supporting your nervous system. This includes small but powerful adjustments like reducing sensory input when you feel overloaded, creating moments of quiet during the day, stepping outside, adjusting lighting, or limiting unnecessary stimulation. These are not minor lifestyle details. They directly influence your ability to regulate attention, energy, and emotion. And finally, it is about shifting the question you ask yourself. Instead of asking, "Why can't I just function like everyone else?" the question becomes, "What does my brain actually need in order to function well?" Because the goal is not to force yourself into a system that was never designed for you. The goal is to understand the system you already have and begin building around that. If you recognized yourself in several of these signs, this may be the beginning of a different kind of clarity. Not about what is wrong with you, but about what has always been there. And from that place, you can start designing a life that actually supports you. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more on ADHD after 40, nervous system regulation, and how to build a calmer, more sustainable way of living.